Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to the Another Nobody podcast with me, your favorite nobody, Travis Myers. We recently sent out a poll, all right, first time we ever did that, to 20 known fans who we know regularly listen to the program. And we asked how we're doing and what all of you liked and didn't like uh, about what it was that we were doing here on the Another Nobody show. And I am very happy to say that we received an overwhelmingly positive response from everybody involved. Now, there were criticisms, but the criticisms were few and very welcome because, as I always say, we can't fix what you like, only what you don't. The praise, however, was very touching, and you guys really, really made us feel great just about everything that we're doing here. With that in mind, this episode is dedicated to all you regular listeners out there in podcast land. We really do love that you like to come and visit us, listen to our conversations, and to me, talking my nonsense each week. Really, really now, no bullshit. Your words were all so just very, very kind, and thank you so very much for taking part in this. Now, of all the responses we got, exactly half of you had said one of your favorite things were listening to the real life stories that you hear from me and from our guests. And so, with that being said, we decided to make at least half of you very happy today. So here we have another edition of Storytime with Travis. And this episode goes out in particular to Terry from Florida, Jacqueline from Tennessee, Susie from New York, Brandon from Massachusetts, Leanne from Colorado, Trish from Michigan, Tracy from Minnesota, Mike from New Jersey, Vinny, also from New Jersey, and finally, Monica from Texas, who specifically asked, I love Story Hour with Travis. Next time, please, could you tell us some police stories from your time in the department? Yes, Monica. Yes, I can. I got a million of these, but when deciding which to choose, I decided to group them into a category so that it all have something in common. And it would be easy to title, and then in the future, when we do this again sometime, we could just pick another category altogether. So today, in light of all the negativity surrounding policing, the defund the police movement, the anti-ICE nonsense, and I guess, the growth of anti-police sentiment in general, I thought I would make this storytelling session about some action-packed violence that you all seem to love so much, but also I wanted to highlight the real restraint that the police show each and every day, that the vast majority of the public is unaware of, and that the media, who sadly has never been the friend of the police, will never ever highlight. So here are a few stories where yours truly could have, and maybe even should have, justifiably pulled the trigger and shot someone dead in the performance of my duty and in defense of my own or someone else's life and or safety. So here we go. Story time with Travis.
Story time, story time, story time with Travis. Story time, story time, story time with Travis. Hey Travis, tell us a story.
Okay, so this first one happened probably in 1994. I was on patrol with this fella named, his last name was either Reardon or O'Riordan. I'm so sorry, I can't remember his full name, but I really did like this guy. We were about the same age, but he had a few, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years on me as far as being on the job. My regular partner was out that day, and his was also, so they teamed us up for the day. Um, what can I say? I really liked working with this guy because he was smart, laid back, had a good sense of humor, and knew how to talk to people. I had ridden with him a few times in the past, um, and on this day, we were together again, and we just had a really good rapport. I can't remember the time this incident happened, but it was early in the day, probably late morning, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, we had handled a few simple jobs when a call had come in for a dispute with a knife. And whatever the address was on Decatur Avenue, it was a fairly tough block with a couple of different drug spots on it. We were less than 2 blocks away at the time. I was driving, and I don't even think we bothered putting on the lights or sirens. We just kind of shot up the street to the building. Um, it was a very nice, older, red brick, single family row house. It was one of four, maybe six, still left on the block, probably from the late 1800s, sandwiched between two larger pre war apartment buildings. Um, the front of each of these row houses had really nice enclosed stoops with these paneled glass vestibules where the glass windows were like on all three sides, wrapping around a fairly tight 6 by 6 stoop, allowing sunlight in, kind of like a full 360-degree visibility of the block. Um, as we pulled up to the building was on my side, and I could see two men fighting inside this glass vestibule. A very large fella, way bigger than me, probably about, I don't know, 6'3", weighing in at 280 pounds, if not 300 or more. And he had the smaller guy, much smaller than me, probably around 5'8", 150 pounds by the neck. And he was holding him down on his knees. And as I flung the door of the car open and ran maybe the 15 feet from the curb to the stoop, I saw the larger guy plunge a knife into the smaller man. Bang, bang, 2 times. There was already blood encircling the interior of the glass paneled windows, the ones I just described, from several of the other stab wounds that I didn't witness before we got there. Of course, I immediately drew my weapon and I began to shout, "Police, don't move! Police, don't move!" And as I made my way up the 3 or 5 steps and pulled the entryway door open, the big guy, thankfully, did as I commanded. The knife held high above his head, ready to stab the little guy again. Our eyes met, and I could tell, he was crazed. The guy was out of his mind with rage. He was covered with sweat. He had specks of and splatters of blood all over his hands, his white t-shirt, his gray sweatpants. The guy, they had been going at it for a minute before we showed up. And in that moment, well, many moments like this, time seems to slow down dramatically. It kind of goes into like a slow motion scene in a movie. I shouted at him to drop the knife. I could hear Reardon or Reardon behind me shouting the same. And the big guy didn't move. He just stared at me, frozen, staring right into my eyes. Now, most of us cops, when we draw our weapons, we don't immediately wrap our fingers around the trigger, okay? We keep that finger to the side to avoid an accidental discharge. But I knowingly remember, I can remember right now, full well, my finger wrapping around that trigger as his eyes left the lock that they had on mine and returned to the little guy who was just screaming his ass off, blood streaming out from all over the place, all the different 6 or 7 holes that the big guy had put in him. And as the big man's eyes left mine and went back to the little guy, I repeated my command, drop the knife. He didn't. And I told him then in a lower but still loud, commanding voice, motherfucker, drop the knife or I will shoot you dead. And my partner for the day, Reardon, was right behind me, shouted, and he promised he will. All right? The big fella's eyes returned to me, and with his hand still up above his head, ready to strike, He opened it up wide, and the knife fell to the floor. Bang, bang, and clacked onto the tile floor. I then ordered him to turn around, and I cuffed him up, having to use 2 pairs of cuffs because he was such a large fella, I couldn't get his wrist together. One pair simply wouldn't fit. So, a big breath for everybody involved. Travis didn't have to kill this big man for stabbing the shit out of the little man. The bus shows up, and a bus, for those not to know, is an ambulance in police talk. I have no idea where they came from, but it was always called a bus, and that takes the little guy to the hospital. And luckily, the doctors save his life. They keep him from dying, so no homicide on Decatur Avenue on this particular day. We bring the big fella to the precinct and get into the processing. Now, I would have been 1,000% justified in shooting this big beast of a man dead. He was in the middle of stabbing another man to death in the entrance of this home. I personally watched him pop him twice with the knife. It was just a really bloody, high energy, very, very dramatic scene. And he had no intention of stopping if it weren't for us intervening. So yes, we did good. We showed up with enough time to stop this assault from turning into a murder. And man, oh man, in the end, was I ever happy that I didn't kill this guy. Because although, as I said, I would have been in the right and completely justified in shooting him, I would have had to live with the fact that I killed another good, decent working guy. Long story short, the big guy was home in bed asleep. He was an x-ray technician over at Montefiore Hospital, and he had worked the graveyard shift the night before. His wife was at her job, his kids were at school, and the little guy was a filthy little miscreant burglar who had broken in from the rear of the house and woke this big guy up as he was ransacking the place. The little guy was armed with a knife also, and the big guy armed himself with a small 6-inch kitchen knife, not a steak knife, but more like one of those, utility kitchen type knives. And the two of them just went at it. And well, the bigger guy disarmed the smaller guy. He most certainly got the better of him. All right. And as they fought their way out of the living room area and through the front door, and then finally got him down on his knees and just went to town on him. So here we are at the precinct. Little guy is in the ER with, another police guard. And I am now totally sympathetic with the big guy's situation. But really, it doesn't matter what I think, because as I have often said on past shows, law enforcement, we the police, don't really enforce shit, okay? I still have to book this guy for the assault. I can't just let him go. I don't charge him with attempted murder, but it's not in my authority or my sergeant's authority or lieutenant's authority to unarrest him. It just doesn't work like that. So I process this poor fucker, then I take him down to central booking, and we just wait for hours to be seen by the district attorney over in the complaint room. Where, after I get in there, I immediately tell the ADA on duty, no, we can't charge this guy. He is the good guy. And I'm able to convince the ADA, who was probably, really more than happy not to have to write this case up anyway, and to 343 him or non-process this arrest. That's what we call it, a non-process. I then went back into central booking, retrieved my prisoner, and actually got us both a ride back to his house and me back to the precinct after something like, 8 or 10 hours after this incident had occurred that morning on Decatur Avenue. Bottom line, I didn't shoot him. Not because it wasn't warranted, not because I wouldn't have been justified, or because I was afraid I was going to get in trouble, but because we, the police, are trained not to shoot people unless we deem it to be absolutely necessary. All right? So with that, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with another for real and for true story about how restrained I was and didn't shoot somebody else. All right, here we go. 2 minutes.
Hey, crime fans!
Join us October 9th through 11th at
Crime Story Fest
Crime Story Fest.
Crime Story Fest
at the Doubletree Hilton on Boston's North Shore, Danvers, Massachusetts location.
Crime Story Fest, all things crime and mystery festival.
Come visit us at Crime Story Fest.
What else you got going on? What, are you going to watch another documentary on Netflix? Come on down to Crime Story Fest. Enjoy yourself. Have a good time. Meet some of your favorite podcasters, authors, experts. This October, Boston, be there. This is a 2024 American Eagle gold coin, which I bought along with several others last year. I'm very happy to report that its value has gone up over 40% in the first year. See, I was encouraged to buy some gold by a financial advisor friend who suggested I be more diversified with my investments. She said gold and silver was a very safe place to park some money, as well as a good hedge against inflation. So I took her advice, and all I can say is I wish I had bought more, as it's been so very, very good to us so far. Now, I purchased these gold coins from the good people over at stackingboise.com, who could not have been nicer, more knowledgeable, or more helpful. Now, I'm certainly no financial expert, but I will say from experience, if you're looking to make an investment, buy yourself some gold. And some real gold that you could hold in your hand, just like this coin you see here. And if you do, then do like I did and get with the good folks over at stackingboise.com. I'm telling you, they're good people, they took good care of me, and they'll take good care of you. Again, that's stackingboise.com. And hey, tell them Travis sent you. All right, we are back with story number 2. It wasn't much after this last story where I was on patrol with my usual partner, Nikki, and we were working Sector Charlie, I believe. A job comes over the radio, and I believe it was actually in Sector David's job, if I'm remembering correctly. It was a family dispute, a man assaulting his daughter. Family disputes, or domestics, as we always call them, are a very, very common call. In fact, the NYPD, I believe, responds to an average of 600 of these a day. So it is a very common call. Now, the building this call is coming from is on Jerome Avenue, and it's directly across St. James Park from where we're sitting in our patrol car. In fact, we can actually see the building from where we're sitting. So my partner, Nikki, takes the job. Even though it's not technically ours to take, we were right there. So we drive around the park and park the car by the fire hydrant just outside the building. The job was on the 3rd floor, if I remember correctly. So we do the old trick of calling for the elevator to come down to the 1st floor. And then we take the stairs up. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the thing is, we know no one is escaping us via the elevator once it's on the 1st floor. Then walking up, nobody can run down the stairs to evade us if we had taken the elevator. So that's like a tactical move, all right? This is a pretty nice, clean building overall. Probably, 50, 60 apartments in the place. And once we get to the floor, we can hear manic shouting coming from down this long hallway, okay? And as we approach, we can hear more and more of the screaming. I was a couple of steps in front of Nikki, and we both unlock and draw our weapons, common practice, for our safety. I look back at him as the shouting and screaming continues, and he gives me the nod, okay? So I know he's ready. I then bang, bang, bang. I bang on the door hard and yell, Police department, open up. More yelling and screaming inside, and again, bang, bang, bang. I hit the door. Police, open up. A couple of seconds go by, and boom! The door violently flies open, and a really large man, I believe he weighed 279 pounds, comes rushing out of the apartment, screaming like a demon, holding a knife in each hand, okay? Both hands up on his forehead, pointing the knives out kind of like they were horns on a bull, okay? Now I really should have shot that fucker right away to protect myself and protect my partner. But it happened so fast, and we were in such a tight, narrow space in that hallway, I just reacted immediately. And luckily, somehow my jujitsu training took over as he got within inches of running me over. I switched my hips and I tried to give him a hip throw as I simultaneously just whacked him across the head as hard as I possibly could with this big, heavy stainless steel Smith & Wesson pistol that I used to carry. Okay? I got the hip throw off. And he went flying, but we both went to the floor. And as we did, somehow he stabbed the knife into my uniform pocket jacket, getting the knife in his wrist all entangled in my pocket. The knife went through my jacket, but not through my vest, I'm very happy to say. And once on the floor, I struck him, I don't know, another 1 or 2 times with my pistol while my partner and I tried to desperately gain control of him. And as we did and as we fought, he went unconscious. All right? We flipped him over on his stomach, cuffed him up, and just like the last guy, the other big guy I was talking about, it took 2 pairs of cuffs to get his hands together. It turned out that this fella was beating one of his daughters severely. His wife had called his sister, who lived in a different building. The sister called the police, and we showed up. The wife came out into the hallway after we got him all cuffed up, and she hugged us. She literally hugged us for coming, okay? As her husband lay unconscious on the floor. The neighbors were all now out in the hallway. Each described this man, Lito Fuentes, that was his name, as a menace to the building. Now, he was known to be violent by the police department. He had several prior arrests. You know, we didn't know this at the time, okay? But in the end, he never regained consciousness on the scene. And that evening, 45 minutes later, he died. The medical examiner said that we, the police, didn't kill him, but that he was in a state of cocaine psychosis when we arrived to the apartment. And between the stress of the large amount of cocaine in his system and the physical exertion of the fight that we had with him, his heart basically tore open, okay? It almost exploded, killing him. He was pronounced dead 45 minutes later at St. Barnabas Hospital. Luck, again being on our side that night, 2 great detectives from the squad, Neil Reardon, no relation to the fellow that I was talking about before, and Danny Hurricane came by, scooped up all the witnesses. They took them all down to the precinct, got their interviews before anyone knew he was dead. Literally days later, there were some lawyers and political activist types trying to make this into a wrongful death suit. But it was too late. Every witness, both his family, his sister, his neighbors, had all given statements on our behalf. Because again, we did the right thing. All right? I remember having to explain the story to the captain and our PBA union delegate later on that evening. And when I asked the PBA rep, this guy Dave Lopez, where do you think this thing is going to go? He did that old thing with 2 palms facing up, weighing the possibilities. And one palm went up, he said, well, you could get a medal. And when the other palm went up, he said, you could also go to jail. And that's the very reality of our job. So in the end, we got a medal. The incident was in the papers, but in no way was it like headline material. And basically, since it was in the Bronx in the 1990s, in the end, nobody really cared. 6 months or more later, we were invited to a dinner held by the Bronx Association for the Prevention of violence towards children, where they honored us with a plaque. In the end, that all sounds nice. I know it does, but it really wasn't. It was just another dangerous job in the Bronx that went sideways that night. A man lost his life, and although I don't think anyone could argue that his family was probably better off without him, a woman still lost her husband, 2 children, their father, and a sister, her brother. And I guess the point of this story, though, was restraint. Neither myself nor my partner discharged our weapons on that day, and we both should have and would have been completely justified in doing so. We didn't, in general, again, because restraint is taught and just beat into us constantly. I personally didn't, just because my first reaction was to attack him physically. No rhyme or reason about it. It was just my reaction. I immediately attacked him when he came out the door. And my partner actually couldn't take a shot because once I stepped in the fray, he might have shot me. We're all so close and tight in this narrow, tiny little hallway. And again, the violence presented itself, but we police officers were restrained. And that's the end of that story. So there you go. Let's take another break. And we'll come right back and I'll tell you some more stuff. 2 minutes, everybody.
You are.
Hey, how you doing? It's me again, another nobody, Travis Myers. And today we're going to talk whiskey. I know most of you think of me as an all-American patriotic type guy, and you are right. But when it comes to whiskey and drinking whiskey, which I do, I always go for the Irish stuff. And my choice when it comes to the Irish stuff is Powers Irish Whiskey. Established back in 1791, it's a triple distilled, oak-aged whiskey. Powers is simply magic. It also happens to be the #1 selling whiskey in Ireland, which has got to say something, because if it's good enough for the Irish, it's good enough for you. So the next time you raise a glass, fill it with Powers, and think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. Hey there, true crime fans. Let me introduce you today to the Cold Case Initiative. The Cold Case Initiative is a foundation that donates money to smaller police agencies all over the country. It does this in order to offset the costs of scientific, forensic, and DNA testing with the hope of solving cold case homicides and other horrific violent crimes that otherwise would remain unsolved. Please, if you have it in your heart and a little money to spare, go to www.coldcaseinitiative.org. Again, that's www.coldcaseinitiative.org, and lend a hand where it truly is needed. Be a part of solving a cold case. Every little bit helps. Know that 100% of the donations that go to the Cold Case Initiative go to agencies that are desperately in need of the help. So please, if you can, do the right thing and make a donation. Thanks, and all the best, my friends. Welcome back, everybody. So, I want you all to know that I am nobody special. While I'm telling these stories of restraint here, both restraint and de-escalation is really what it's all about in police work. And here I'm telling a couple of stories of my own where I could certainly come up with, I don't know, maybe dozens of these of my own. But so could every other active cop out there. The guys who really do the job and are in the thick of it, the guys who are really in the mix, all have dozens of these stories. I mean, dozens of them. I remember once when I was on patrol, almost shot a plainclothed anti-crime officer who was holding a perp against the wall by his throat. A civilian ran up to me while I was on foot patrol and told me a guy had a gun right around the corner and was robbing somebody. So I ran around that corner to find that guy. And it turned out he was a plainclothes cop who had just run down a robbery suspect. I didn't see his shield hanging around his neck. I didn't see the color of the day wrapped around his wrist. All I saw was a man with a gun holding another man by the throat. I pointed my pistol at him and I shouted, "Stop, police." It was a very intense moment. But in the end, we all survived it. I myself had a gun put right in my face by another cop while I too was working in plain clothes as a detective in narcotics. It's what you do when you see a gun. The anti-crime guy was cool with me. No hard feelings. And I was cool with the cop who stopped me at gunpoint. It comes with the territory, okay? And the restraint comes from your training and in part from your experience. No cop wants to go out and shoot people. That line is complete bullshit. A 1 in a million type situation. And the numbers actually prove that. When we were at anti-crime, I remember I came inches away from killing a young man of about 14 who was pointing one of those stupid little gun-shaped lighters at another teen. When I exited the car, my gun already out, pointing at him, the stupid moron decided not to obey my commands to drop his weapon. Instead, telling me, instead, trying to explain to me that it was a lighter. He was a, a cocky little loudmouth expecting me to know the difference from 15, 20 feet away on a dark night while he and his friends were roughhousing on a stoop at an hour later than any 14-year-old should have been out in the middle of the night, especially in the Bronx, okay? But he did shut up. He shut up once he realized he was going to be shot, but then got mouthy again once we had the lighter and we holstered our weapons. He didn't get shot that night, thank God. Just embarrassed in front of all of his friends when I slapped him in the head and gave him a really good hard kick in the ass after I threw that idiotic lighter down the sewer. All right? Now, let me think. There was another time while we were working anti-crime where a similar thing happened. We were watching two teens who appeared to be up to no good. One who kept touching his waistband. He kept going to his waistband. Something any seasoned cop would tell you is a telltale sign, okay? We both hop out of our car, guns drawn, and pointing them at these two kids. And the one that was so fidgety was smiling at us and said, "Nah, nah, nah. All's I got is this pipe, yo." And this stupid moron reached into his waistband and began to pull out a 12-inch pipe that he had tucked down in his pants. Now here, like in the Lito Fuentes case, the one I just told you about, my partner, instead of me, shouted, "No!" He screamed "no!" and ran and tackled this kid, knocking him to the ground before I could shoot him. And understand, I absolutely would have shot that kid had he pulled that pipe from his pants. And I would have been 100% right in doing so. Again, to protect myself and to protect my partner. Another story for you. Here's one. And maybe this will be the last one for this session of story time, okay? I remember I was working in Bronx Narcotics Division. Plain clothes, as always. We were doing a buy and bust operation. Myself and one of my favorite bosses, Sergeant Hayes. We were on Marion Avenue, maybe a quarter of the way up the block from 194th Street, a ridiculously notorious and very dangerous stretch of, 4 or 5 blocks that literally had like 8 or 10 different drug locations on it. All kinds of awful shit went on 194th Street. We were sitting there waiting for our uncles. That's narcotics talk for undercovers to set up so we can get started with this operation. And we're sitting there and we hear pop, 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 pop. We both sit up at attention in the car to the unmistakable sound of gunfire in the Bronx. Now, the thing to do in this situation is to remain cool and pay attention and listen, because the sound of the shots, it bounces off of buildings and concrete and the blacktop, and you never really know where it's coming from. So you don't want to get excited or rush around and miss something. You almost kind of want to zone out while you kind of zone into everything at the same time so you can hear and see what's happening. I put the car in drive and basically let it roll silently down the block and through the intersection of 194 and Marion. It's late for most people, for regular people, but again, this is the Bronx, and the street was pretty busy at this hour. We can see people moving about halfway down the block towards 193rd Street. I don't know, a group of 10, 12 people, and they're kind of all moving around. There's a small crowd of them in the middle of the block, and then again, pop, pop, pop. 3 more shots ring out. Some of the crowd is running our way, as they disperse and bounce around. And I see one kid, though. I see one kid, 18, maybe 20 years old, about 5'9". He's thin. He's got a black hoodie on. He's not running. He's walking. Both hands in that kangaroo pouch of his hoodie. Cool as can be. And I immediately know, that's the kid. I stop the car. That's him, I say, in the black hoodie. Sergeant Hayes asks. I said, yeah, that's him in the black hoodie. We exit our vehicle just as he steps up on the corner curb to our right on the passenger side. He pulls a small black .380 pistol from the hoodie and again shoots it down the block. Pop! In the direction that he just came from. Sergeant Hayes and I, both shout, "Stop, police!" And this fucker turns towards us and lets another round go in our direction. He then takes off running, and rather than shooting him again, we both give chase. Hayes is directly behind him, and I'm still in the street, but on the other side of the parked cars. When a break in the cars come, probably, there was a fire hydrant or something there, so there was no car, I'm able to cut in front and just knock this fucker to the ground with a left fist as I cross his path. The pistol bounces across the pavement, and I proceed to beat this idiot into submission and cuff him up. All right? Luckily on that evening, this filthy savage, the kid could not hit water if he fell out of a boat. And not a single one of those bullets hit anybody. But for our purposes here again, these stories are about restraint. As police officers, both Sergeant Hayes and I were family men. We had wives and children to go home to. We should have shot this guy dead immediately. But rather than lighting this kid up, like we could have, and most definitely should have, we acted with restraint. And statistics bear this out, as 73% of police officers nationwide will never fire their weapons at a perpetrator even once in their entire careers. All right? This contrasts sharply with public opinion, which, according to a Pew survey done just a couple of years ago, 83% of adults polled believe the typical police officer fires his weapon at somebody at least once in their career. And when we look at the numbers, as you know I like to do, with the 50 to 60 million encounters the public has with the police here in America each year, only between 1,000 and 1,400 of those interactions result in a police officer shooting somebody. Now that's 0.0002% of the population at risk of being shot on the low end and 0.00028% on the high end, or 1 in about every 41,667 interactions. In other words, it's very rare for the police to shoot anyone, even rarer to kill somebody. And when they do, it almost is always in defense of themselves and or others. I worked in the Bronx in the 1990s, the most violent decade in American history. I never once pulled the trigger, although I could have several times. I have friends who have been in shootouts and shot perpetrators, but only when they themselves were in fear for their lives. It's a reality of our job that is just all too real. As I have known several cops who have been shot and have been shot dead. The reckless, I want to make this clear, all right? The reckless gunslinging cop is a myth propagated by television, the movies, and of course the news media, who just love a good cop shooting. Because as they say in the news, if it bleeds, it leads. And there is nothing new or newsworthy about a bad guy shooting a bad guy, or when another robbery goes wrong, another carjacking goes wrong in the inner city, or someone is dead. It's only news when a rich person, a college student, a child, or a cop is involved. That's just a simple fact. Now, I'm sorry, because this was supposed to be story time with Travis, and I unfortunately had to throw a bunch of numbers and facts and statistics at you, but facts are facts, okay? And I think you need to know them. So here were a couple of my personal stories. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope I satisfied the story craving in you. And next time you see some cop being crucified to the news for pulling the trigger, maybe, just maybe, you think about these stories I told today and give him the benefit of the doubt and think, gee, what if I was in the same situation? What would I do? Because chances are you would pull the trigger too. And that's all I got for you this week, all right? I hope you enjoyed story time. All the best, everybody. And remember, please do remember, the police as a whole are your friends. They are the good guys. Even when you're not happy with them, they're there to serve you, all right? That's all I got for you. Until next week, my friends, all the best. Please, do the right thing. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button, especially the subscribe button. It helps us out so much. And we will see you all again next week. So, due to our overwhelming popularity, thanks to you, our listeners, we are getting questions in from all over the place. The problem is, some come in over here, some come in over there. So what we've done, okay, is something new. We have questiontravistoday@gmail.com. Again, that's questiontravistoday@gmail.com, where you can send all your questions in, and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to us. All the best, my friends. Hey, how you doing? Another nobody here, Travis Myers. This one's going out in particular to all my drinking friends out there, because I got a new favorite thing, and it's called Shanky's Whip, and it is magical. It's Irish whiskey mixed with a little caramel, a little cream, a little vanilla, and it's heavenly. What more can I say? I suggest you pick up a bottle. You can have it as a shot with a cold beer, like I like. On the rocks, it's great. Mix it with a little cola. I promise you, you're going to love this stuff. Next time you raise a glass, think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. Hey, do the right thing. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my nonsense. All the best, my friends.